Oh, yes, okay, good. Oh, so, all right. So today, we're going to talk more about George Balanchine, who dominated 20th century ballet through his choreography and his company, the New York City Ballet, just the way that Petipa dominated 19th century ballet through his choreography and his company, the Imperial Russian Ballet, also called the Mariinsky, in St. Petersburg. As I mentioned last week, when Balanchine came from Russia to the West, he was almost immediately hired by Serge Diaghilev, and he choreographed many ballets for Diaghilev's company, the Ballet Russe. That did not last, many ballets that didn't last, but his two early masterpieces for that company, Apollo and Prodigal Son, one choreographed in 1928 and one choreographed in 1929, the last year that Diaghilev had his company before he died. They're still being danced all over the world today, and Balanchine choreographed those when he was 24 years old and 25 years old. So that was pretty amazing. After Diaghilev died in 1929, his company disbanded, and Balanchine found himself leading a very peripatetic life, trying to continue to find work in Europe wherever he could. And he was, for a year, he was ballet master at the Danish Ballet, and he choreographed West End musical shows in London, and he choreographed a little bit for the Marquis de Cuevas, who had an offshoot of a Ballet Russe company, but he really had a lot of trouble getting work, and he had his own little group that lasted just a few months in 1933 called Les Ballets 1933. And then Lincoln Kirstein, the great American arts patron, invited Balanchine to come to America to start a ballet company. But it was not as easy as Lincoln or Balanchine thought it was going to be. First of all, when he got here, there were no good dancers, and most people didn't know what classical ballet was in America in 1933. So Balanchine said, okay, let's start a school. And he started the School of American Ballet about 4 months after he arrived in America. And the School of American Ballet obviously still exists today, and it's trained most of the dancers that have been in the New York City Ballet over a really long period of time. But this nomadic life that he led in Europe after Diaghilev died from 1929 to 1933, unfortunately did not come to an end when he came to America. And he established the School of American Ballet very quickly, but his road to founding the New York City Ballet was much more circuitous. Kirstein and Balanchine made several attempts to establish an American classical ballet company with names like the American Ballet, Ballet Caravan, the American Ballet Caravan, Ballet Society. None of them stuck. And for several years, Balanchine choreographed for Broadway and Hollywood, and he made several ballets for a company that called itself the Ballet Russe, but was nothing like Diaghilev's company in Paris. It was an itinerant touring company that performed for the most part in American cities large and small. It did do some touring in Europe, but was mostly in America. And it was not able to sustain performances wherever it went. In the larger cities, maybe a week or two at the most. And most of the year, they did one-night stands where they got on a bus, they got into the city that morning, they put the show on the stage by rehearsing that afternoon. That night, they put on the show. The next morning, they got up, they got out of the hotel, they went on the bus, and they got to the next city. So one night after the other. And sometimes for 200 nights at a time on one-night stands. It was very, very difficult for those dancers. And he choreographed a couple of ballets for American Ballet Theater, which was only called Ballet Theater in those days. His most famous being the Theme and Variations, that also is still performed today, both by American Ballet Theater and by the New York City Ballet, as well as other companies around the world. He managed, in the 15 years that when he came to America in 1933, before he established the New York City Ballet in 1948, he managed to choreograph 7 masterpieces. Serenade, the first ballet he choreographed for America to Tchaikovsky's Serenade. Ballet Imperial, which is also to a Tchaikovsky piano concerto, and today he got rid of the tutus because it was imperial ballet, like he remembered from his time in Russia. And then many years later, in the 70s, he had changed it to chiffon skirts, and he made it into a neoclassic ballet, with not changing the choreography, just changing the approach, which is pretty interesting. He also choreographed Concerto Barocco, his La Sonnambula about the sleepwalker, the Four Temperaments, which we're going to talk about in detail in a minute, and Symphony in C. So altogether, 7 ballets during 15 years that have survived and are still being performed all over the world today. After the New York City Ballet was finally established, he created so many important ballets from 1948 until he died in 1983 that just naming them would take too long, and describing them even longer. So again, if you want to know more about Balanchine and his choreography, you can go Google George Balanchine on the internet, and almost everything about him comes up. And it is very interesting, and even to learn about some of the ballets would be interesting. I now want to talk a little bit about the Four Temperaments. This ballet is one of the ballets in history that was a game changer. It moved ballet choreography into a new dimension. It incorporated turned-in movements and contractions that were invented by Martha Graham. Contractions are when you contract your body from your stomach and you make gestural movement through your body. So he incorporated the contractions invented by Martha Graham, which he saw modern dance for the first time when he came to America. And she was the great pioneer of modern dance. Although it was first danced, the Four Temperaments, in costumes, when he took them away and presented the work in leotards and tights, it was truly a breath of fresh air to see ballet unencumbered by costumes or scenery, and it was all just about the choreography. Nevertheless, the basis of all the choreography in the Four Temperaments is still classical vocabulary, even though it is stretched and elongated, and there's much expressionist gesture also incorporated into the combinations. It still relies basically on classical ballet. So the Four Temperaments are an ancient Greek medical notion that the body was controlled by 4 humors. The belief was that certain moods and emotions were controlled by these 4 humors, and that people had an excess or a deficiency of one or more of them that contributed to their personality. So the humors were 1, black bile, melancholic. Melancholic means sad, serious, poetic, artistic, depressed. The humors, black bile, melancholic. 2, the second humor, blood, sanguinic. Excited, warm-hearted, optimistic, volatile, spirited. The third, phlegmatic, laid back, calm, rational, cool. The fourth, yellow bile, choleric, fiery, high energy, determined, impassioned, and strong. So this belief persisted through the Middle Ages. It was developed by the Greeks, persisted through the Middle Ages, and even into the Renaissance period. Many people believe this. Actually, it didn't go away completely. This belief of the 4 humors that caused the people to have different temperaments, it didn't go away until modern medicine disabused everyone of this notion, and it took a really long time for people to not believe it. And I mean, it's something that people don't believe today, although they still believe in some people still believe in horoscopes and other nonsense, but they don't believe in this anymore, at least. Nevertheless, it's a very poetic thought that people have these humors that cause them to be somebody is more a sad personality, somebody is more a happy personality. Balanchine used these temperaments to create a ballet that expressed these emotions through dance and gesture. Even though scientifically we know that there are no bodily humors that control personality, It does seem as if each person has a combination of emotions and moods and personality traits that make them the individuals they are. Even today, people still comment, that person has a sunny or sanguine personality, or this one has a sad, wistful, or melancholy personality. The music that Balanchine chose was by Paul Hindemith, and it has three themes at the beginning, which express the themes that are going to be used throughout the music, the structure of the music. But when we show it, we're going to show only the four temperaments, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And you'll see what he did, and he commissioned music from a famous German composer named Paul Hindemith to express the feelings that he wanted to express. And so I'm going to show you one of Balanchine's masterpieces, The Four Temperaments. And we'll talk about it on the other side as Okay. Oh, can they hear me?
Yep. They're here.
Okay, so we stopped before the end, but that was most of Choleric. If you want to see the rest of it, it's on YouTube. So it was New York City Ballet. And Sanguinic was Sarah Mearns, and Melancholic was Gonzalo Garcias, and who were the others, Peggy?
Adrian Donching.
Oh, yeah, Adrian Dashing Waring, and
Yes.
I think that was Teresa Reichland at the
Yeah,
end.
it was.
Yeah. Anyway, the rest of it, if you want to just see the finale, it's on YouTube. You all the people who volunteered to choreograph did such a good job. I'm really pleased to see that, and you know, you should think about doing more choreography. It's a fun thing to do. I actually started choreographing when I was 12 years old. So I choreographed for my summer camps, Broadway style musicals, and then I choreographed on my friends at the School of American Ballet when I was 16 and 17. I saw a lot of talent today, so keep it up. And this is the last class. I hope you enjoyed the history, and we'll see you next year maybe. Okay.
Thank you, guys.